Good morning. We're going to read chapters 16 through 17 this week of April 6th through the 9th, and then I'll upload all your assignments online. These particular chapters, I think we're going to do two. So I'll probably do one now, and then I'll come back and read chapter 17 and post it probably on Wednesday. Okay? Any questions that you have about chapter 16, I should be able to answer them at the end when I finish and explain what's happening in the chapters. If I'm not looking up at the camera, it's because my book is down here and I'm reading down here. Okay, you ready? All right. The season closed and people went away like they had come in droves. Tea Cake and Janie decided to stay since they wanted to make another season on the muck. There was nothing to do after they had gathered several bushels of dried beans to save over and sell to the planters in the fall. So Janie began to look around and see people and things she hadn't noticed during the season. For instance, during the summer, when she had heard the subtle but compelling rhythms of the Bahamian drummers, she walked over and watched the dances. She did not laugh the saws to scorn as she had heard the people doing in the season. She got to like it a lot, and she and Tea Cake were on hand every night till the others teased them about it. Janie came to know Mrs. Turner now. She had seen her several times during the season, but neither ever spoke. Now they got to be visiting friends. Miss Turner was a milky sort of a woman that belonged to childbed. Her shoulders rounded a little, and she must have been conscious of her pelvis because she kept it stuck out in front of her so she could always see it. Tea Cake made a lot of fun about Miss Turner's shape behind her back. He claimed that she had been shaped up by a cow kicking her from behind. She was an ironing board with things thrown at it. Then that same cow took and stepped in her mouth when she was a baby and left it wide and flat with her chin and nose almost medium. Miss Turner's shape and features were entirely approved by Mrs. Turner. Her nose was slightly pointed and she was proud. Her thin lips were an ever delight to her eyes. Even her buttocks in bas relief were a source of pride. To her way of thinking, all those things set her aside from Negroes. That was why she sought out Janie to friend with. Janie's coffee and cream complexion and her luxurious hair made Mrs. Turner forgive her for wearing overalls like the other women who worked in the fields. She didn't forgive her for marrying a man as dark as Tea Cake, but she felt that she could remedy that. That was what her brother was born for. She seldom stayed long when she found Tea Cake at home, but when she happened to drop in and catch Janie alone, she spent hours chatting away. Her disfavorite subject was Negroes. Mrs. Woods, I have often said to my husband, I don't see how a lady like Miss Woods can stand all them common Negroes around her place all the time. They don't worry me at all, Miss Turner. Fact about the thing is, they tickles me with they talk. You got more nerve than me. When somebody talks my husband into coming down here to open up an eating place, I never dreamed so many different kinds of black folks could collect in one place. I never would have come. I ain't used to associating with black folks. My son claims they draws lightning. They laughed a little. And after many of these talks, Mrs. Turner said, your husband must have had plenty of money when y'all got married. What make you think that, Miss Turner? To get a hold of a woman like you got more nerve than me, 'cause I just couldn't see myself married to no black man. It's too many black folks already. We ought to lighten up the race. No, my husband didn't have nothing but himself. He's easy to love if you mess around him. And I loves it. Why, you, Miss Woods? I don't believe it. You's just sort of hypnotized, that's all. No, it's real. I couldn't stand it if he was to quit me. Don't know what I'd do. He can take most any little thing and make summertime out of it when times is dull. Then we lives off of that happiness he made till some more happiness come along. You's different from me. I can't stand black Negroes. I don't blame the white folks from hating them because I can't stand them myself. Another thing, I hate to see folks like me and you mixed up with them. Us out of class off. Us can't do it. We's a mingled people, and all of us got black kinfolks as well as yellow kinfolks. How come you so against black? And they makes me tired, always laughing. They laughs too much, and they laughs too loud. Always singing old Negro songs. Always cutting the monkey for white folks. If it wasn't for so many black folks, it wouldn't be no race problem. The white folks would take us in with them. The black ones is holding us back. You reckon? Of course, I ain't never thought about it too much, but I don't figure they even going to want us for company. We's too poor. Ain't the poorness, it's the color and the features. Who want any little old black baby laying up in the baby buggy looking like a flying buttermilk? Who wants to be mixed up with a rusty black man and a black woman going down the street in them loud colors and whooping and hollering and laughing over nothing? I don't know. Don't bring me no Negro doctor to hang over my sick bed. I done had 6 children. Wasn't lucky enough to raise but that one. And I ain't never had a Negro touch to even feel my pulse. White doctors always gets my money. I don't go in no Negro store to buy nothing neither. Colored folks don't know nothing about no business. Deliver me. Miss Turner was almost screaming in fanatical earnestness by now. Janie was dumb and bewildered before, and she clucked sympathetically and wished she knew what to say. It was so evident that Miss Turner took black folks as a personal affront to herself. Look at me. I ain't got no flat nose and little lips. I'm a featured woman. I got white folks' features in my face. Still in all, I got to be lumped in with all the rest. It ain't even fair. Even if they don't take us in with the whites, they ought to make us a class to ourselves. It don't worry me at all, but I reckon I ain't got no real head for thinking. You ought to meet my brother. He's real smart, got dead straight hair. They made him a delegate to a Sunday school convention, and he read a paper on Booker T. Washington and tore him to pieces. Booker T. He was a great big man, wasn't he? Supposed to be. All he ever done was cut the monkey for the white folks. So they pumped him up. But you know what the old folks say: the higher the monkey climbs, the more he shows his behind. So that's the way it was with Booker T. My brother hit him every time they give him a chance to speak. I was raised on the notion that he was a great big man, was all that Janie knew to say. He didn't do nothing but hold us back, talking about work when the race ain't never done nothing else. He was an enemy to us, that's what, and he was a white folks Negro. According to all Janie had been taught, this was sacrilege, so she sat without speaking at all. But Miss Turner went on. I done sent for my brother to come down and spend a while with us. He's sort of out to work now. I want you to meet him most special. You and him will make up a swell couple if you wasn't already married. He's a fine carpenter when he can get anything to do. Yeah, maybe so, but I is married now, so ain't no use in considering. Miss Turner finally rose to go after being very firm about several other viewpoints of either herself, her son, or her brother. She begged Janie to drop in on her anytime, but never once mentioning tea cake. Finally, she was gone, and Janie hurried to her kitchen to put on supper and found Tea Cake sitting in there with his head between his hands. Tea Cake, I didn't know you was home. I know you didn't. I've been here a long time listening to that heifer run me down to the dogs and try to tow you off from me. So that's what she was up to. I didn't know. Of course she is. She got some no-count brother she wants you to look up with and take care of, I reckon. Shucks, if that's her notion, she barking up the wrong tree. My hands is full already. Thank you, ma'am. I haste that woman like poison. Keep her from round this house. Her look like a white woman with that mirror-y skin and hair just as close to her head as a 99 is to 100. Since she hate black folks so, she don't need our money in her old eating place. I'll pass the word along. We can go to that white man's place and get good treatment. Her and that widowed down husband of hers and that son. He's just a dirty trick her womb played on her. I'm telling her husband to keep her home. I don't want her around this house. One day, TK met Turner and his son on the street. He was a vanishing looking kind of man, as if there used to be parts about him that stuck out individually, but now he hadn't a thing about him that wasn't dwindled and blurred, just like he had been sandpapered down to a long oval mass. TK felt sorry for him without knowing why, so he didn't blurt out the insults he had intended. But he couldn't hold in everything. They talked about the prospects for the coming season for a moment. Then TK said, "Your wife don't seem to have nothing much to do, so she can visit a lot. Mine got too much to do to go visiting and too much to spend time talking to folks that visit her. My wife takes time for whatever she wants to do. Real strong-headed that way. Yes, indeed." He laughed a high, lungless laugh. "The chillin' don't keep her in no more, so she visits when she chooses." "The chillin'?" TK asked in surprise. "You got any smaller than him?" He indicated the son, who seemed around 20 or so. "I ain't seen your others." "I reckon you ain't, 'cause they all passed on before this one was born. We ain't had no luck at all with our children. We lucky to raise him. He's the last stroke of exhausted nature." He gave his powerless laugh again, and TK and the boy joined in with it. Then TK walked on off and went home to Janie. "Her husband can't do nothing with that butt-headed woman. All you can do is treat her cold whenever she come around here." Janie tried that, but short of telling Miss Turner bluntly there was nothing she could do to discourage her completely, she felt honored by Janie's acquaintance, and she quickly forgave and forgot snobs in order to keep it. Anyone who looked more white folkish than herself was better than she was in her criteria. Therefore, it was right that they should be cruel to her at times, just as she was cruel to those more Negroid than herself in direct ratio to other Negroness. Like the pecking order in a chicken yard, insensate cruelty to those you can whip and groveling submission to those you can't. Once having set up her idols and built altars to them, it was inevitable that she would worship there. It was inevitable that she should accept any inconsistency and cruelty from her deity, as all good worshippers do from theirs. All gods who receive homage are cruel. All gods dispense suffering without reason. Otherwise, they would not be worshipped. Through indiscriminate suffering, men know fear, and fear is the most divine emotion. It is the stones for altars and the beginning of wisdom. Half gods are worshipped in wine and flowers. Real gods require blood. Miss Turner, like all others believers, have built an altar to the unattainable, Caucasian characteristics for all. Her God would smite her, would hurl her from pinnacles and lose her in deserts, but she would not forsake his altars. Behind her crude words was a belief that somehow she and others, through worship, could attain her paradise, a heaven of straight-haired, thin-lipped, high-nosed, boned white seraphs. The physical impossibilities in no way injured faith. That was the mystery, and mysteries are the chores of gods. Beyond her face was a fanaticism to defend the altars of her God. It was distressing to emerge from her inner temple and find these black desecrators howling with laughter before the door. Oh, for an army, terrible with banners and swords. So she didn't cling to Janie Woods, the woman. She paid homage to Janie's Caucasian characteristics as such. And when she was with Janie, she had a feeling of transmutation, as if she herself had become whiter and with straighter hair, and she hated Tea Cake, first for his defilement of divinity, and next for his telling mockery of her. If she only knew something she could do about it, but she didn't. Once she was complaining about the carryings on at the jute, and Tea Cake snapped. "Ah, don't make God look so foolish, finding fault with everything he made." So Miss Turner frowned most of the time. She had so much to disapprove of. It didn't affect Tea Cake and Janie too much. It just gave them something to talk about in the summertime when everything was dull on the muck. Otherwise, they made little trips to Palm Beach, Fort Myers, Fort Lauderdale for their fun. Before they realized it, the sun was cooler and the crowds came pouring onto the muck again. All right, and so that's the end of chapter 16. So chapter 16 takes up the issue of colorism. And Zora Neale Hurston is very methodical and deliberate in her inclusion of that chapter in this book. She pits Mrs. Turner, who is light, not as light as Janie, but who is a light-skinned African American, and she deals with the discrimination and the issue of slavery by projecting it against darker people. Since she can't really project that anger towards whites, she turns around and projects that anger towards those that she can, which she says is the darker people. And she sort of says, if it wasn't for the darker skinned Negroes, then, white people wouldn't hate them as much. Janie sort of listens, but is not too keen on what Mrs. Turner is saying, simply because she knows better. But she doesn't really, I would say, antagonize Mrs. Turner too much. She sort of lets her go on in her thinking. Tea Cake, though, and which is why I told you that the movie doesn't do the book justice, because the movie buys in to that same sort of colorism, right? So instead of casting the character of Tea Cake as a dark-skinned man, like he should have been cast as, they casted him as some like light-skinned guy. And it basically takes away from the book because that's not what Hurston intended. But again, it's the issue of colorism. The lighter you are, the closer you are to white, the better you are supposedly as a person. You're supposed to be. If you have any questions about that chapter, you can email me, let me know. Otherwise, that is the end of this taping. I will do chapter 17 and then I'll post that as well. All right. See you guys.